The stars shimmered like cold fire above the Galactic Assembly Hall, where war was declared not with firepower, but with laughter. Humans, scoffed Admiral Threx of the Jorith Dominion, his chitinous mandibles clicking with amusement. They still fire projectiles from tubes of metal. One must admire their nostalgia. A low ripple of chuckles echoed through the amphitheater, filled with admirals, tacticians, and aristocrats of the great empires. The holographic projection spinning above the table displayed an Earth military demonstration. Soldiers in crude armor, crouched in foliage, firing analog rifles with mechanical recoil. Primitive, inefficient, predictable. They call it a sniper, said General Vorthan-Kai of the Vekari Ascendancy, leaning back in his throne of plasma-forged obsidian. One individual, one bullet. They wait hours, sometimes days, for a single shot. Barbaric, romantic in a way. Obsolete, Threx said, waving a claw dismissively. Their tech is centuries behind. Let them keep their toys. We'll vaporize them with clean energy and never touch the dirt. A consensus of arrogance swept the room. No one challenged it. No one ever had to, except humanity. Thousands of light years away, on the jungle planet Tarkis 9, the atmosphere was thick with moisture and tension. The canopy overhead breathed in the sunlight, casting a shifting tapestry of shadows across the mossy floor. Every insect chirp, every gust of wind, was analyzed, cataloged, and dismissed by the man hidden beneath layers of dirt, burlap, and synthetic leaf mesh. Captain Elias Rowe, callsign Deadeye, lay flat against the forest floor, unmoving for 6 hours. Sweat trickled down his spine. He ignored it. His heart beat slow, almost unnaturally so, as his breathing matched the rhythm of the wind brushing through the undergrowth. His rifle, a lovingly modified AMR-9, rested on a handmade bipod carved from local wood. No powered systems, no noise, no emissions. The Empire's scanners would see nothing but vegetation and rock. A whisper crackled in his earpiece. Recon Bravo to Ghost 1. You reading? Deadeye moved only his jaw. Ghost 1 copies. We've got visual on the Empire's forward camp. Heavy landing confirmed. Target is Vorthan-Kai. Repeat, Vorthan-Kai is on site. Deadeye's eyes narrowed. He didn't need to reply. His orders were clear. Watch, assess, and if the opportunity presented itself, take the shot. Simple on paper. In reality, it was suicide. Still, someone had to be the edge of the spear. He adjusted the scope slightly. Through layers of branches and humid air, the clearing came into view. The Empire's mobile command spire, a towering black structure lined with red pulse lights, had landed with a deep seismic thud earlier that morning. Its surface shimmered faintly with energy shielding. Next to it, troops marched in formation, their armor smooth and bright like insects plated in chrome. Deadeye watched them, not with hatred, but with calculation. They had no idea what real war was. Back in orbit, on the Empire's flagship luminance of order, Vorthan-Kai leaned over a strategy table shaped like a living star map. His armor bore the ceremonial scars of conquests long completed, each etched by hand. Behind him, his war council observed as drone feeds from Tarkis 9 flickered across a vertical display. Have a local nest been cleared? He asked. Affirmative, General. Native fauna poses minimal threat. And human presence? Scattered. We estimate 1 recon unit, possibly 12 soldiers, equipped with ballistic weaponry and optical camo. No plasma. No orbital capability. Vorthan-Kai's lip curled in amusement. 12 men in leaves. He dismissed the feed with a swipe. Let them watch, he said. Let them whisper into their radios and worship their bullets. By this time tomorrow, Tarkis 9 will belong to the Ascendancy. Back on the surface, Deadeye slowly reached into his pouch and removed a small notebook. Inside were sketches, hand-drawn, water-smudged, of Empire equipment, tactical notes, wind patterns, and 1 photograph. A girl of maybe 10 years old, smiling with a gap in her teeth, arms wrapped around a dog. His daughter. Their dog. He folded the notebook closed and placed it back into the pouch. A ritual. A reminder. He checked the chamber. The round was seated perfectly. The shell was hand-machined, not standard issue. The casing bore his initials, scratched in with a knife. Yar. A few clicks over, two members of Recon Bravo, Sergeant Mendez and Specialist Jane, crawled into position. They weren't supposed to engage, just spot and confirm target presence. Jane held a monocular, tapping a finger against its side. "I got him," she whispered. "Vorthan-Kai's out. Eastern deck. Mid-level. No helmet." Mendez cursed under his breath. "Can't believe he's that exposed." Deadeye spoke for the first time in hours. "He's not exposed. He's making a point." "What kind of point?" Jane asked. "That he doesn't need cover. That he's untouchable." Mendez's voice dropped. "We doing this?" "Negative," Deadeye said. "Too far. Shield still up." Jane frowned. "What if you miss?" "I won't." A moment passed. Not a boast. Just fact. Deadeye watched the general. Vorthan-Kai stood on the deck like a man admiring scenery. Surrounded by sensors, drones, and elite guards, he seemed more like a symbol than a soldier. Deadeye adjusted his scope by 0.2 mils. "They'll come through this valley," he murmured. Mendez looked over. "You sure?" "Satellite scans. Ridge routes are too exposed. If he's planning to march, it'll be through here." "What if he drops plasma from orbit instead?" "He won't," Deadeye said. "He wants to surrender. Public. Clean. He's building a story." And that was the fatal flaw. These aliens wanted to win like politicians, not warriors. Recon Bravo withdrew silently, fading back into the underbrush. Deadeye stayed. Night came in with slow indigo and the constant hum of insects. Through the scope, the tower glowed like a dying ember, pulsing with internal energy. Shield still up. The general still visible. Deadeye reached for his canteen, but stopped halfway. The target moved. Vorthan-Kai stepped off the platform, entered the tower, and disappeared from view. Lights shifted. The command spire was preparing for uplink. Something big was coming. Deadeye marked the wind again. Humidity 94%. Wind negligible. Distance 2,671 meters. His rifle could handle it. He could handle it, but it wasn't time. Not yet. He closed his eyes, inhaled through his nose, and let the breath leave slowly. The jungle breathed with him, slow and eternal. Somewhere in the distance, plasma burned a hole in the forest canopy, but he didn't flinch. He wasn't here to react. He was here to end things. In orbit, Vorthan-Kai recorded a message to be broadcast across human networks. "To the people of Earth," he began, voice smooth and patronizing. "You fought bravely, but your time is over. Lay down your weapons. Accept the future. There will be no mercy in resistance." He ended the transmission and turned toward the stars. "They will break," he told his second-in-command. "Not with fire, with fear." Below, still as stone, Deadeye waited. His finger rested beside the trigger guard. His eye never left the scope. And when the moment came, when the shield flickered for just a heartbeat, he would be ready. He always was. The forest on Tarkis, 9 didn't sleep. Even in darkness, it moved, alive with bioluminescent fungi and whispering leaves that passed secrets from tree to tree. Deadeye moved with equal quiet, boots wrapped in cloth, body coated in a blend of sweat, dirt, and oil to mask scent. He had long since given up looking like a man. Out here, being human made you visible. For the last 12 hours, he tracked the Empire's scout patrols as they expanded outward from the command spire. Unlike humans, who use concentric sweeps and unpredictable patterns, the Empire's drones moved like clockwork, efficient, predictable, and fatally ignorant of terrain. They didn't crawl. They didn't hide. They assumed supremacy. Elias Rowe had built his life around exploiting assumptions. A low chirp, artificial and deliberate, reached his ear. He froze. A shadow moved through the brush 20 meters ahead. The shape was human, broad-shouldered, hunched low. A hand signal followed, barely visible in the gloom. Sergeant Mendez. Deadeye crept forward on his belly, joining him beneath a collapsed tree trunk where bark had decayed to a soft sponge. "They've cleared a second landing zone," Mendez whispered. "Southeast quadrant. More transports inbound." "How many?" "3 gunships." maybe 50 troops, plus 2 armor crawlers. Vorthan's building a corridor. Looks like it. He's prepping for a full push tomorrow at dawn. Deadeye nodded once. Jane. Mendez's mouth tightened. Gone. Thermal sweep. No warning. There was a pause. Deadeye didn't close his eyes. Didn't flinch. He simply absorbed the loss and let it become a stone in his gut. Jane had been 24. Good eyes. Steady hands. Curious about everything. How long, he asked. Minutes. Drone hit her with something new. Radiant flash. Body was gone. Deadeye pulled his hood lower and lay still for several long breaths. They're getting cautious, he muttered. Mendez said nothing. Deadeye reached into his pack and drew out a worn, cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside, piece by piece, was a second rifle. Longer, heavier, with a custom barrel and dampened recoil coil. The Kestrel Mk2 was a relic of Earth's last intercontinental war, retired by most armies, but in his hands, it was surgical. They're not expecting us to stay close, he said. They think we'll run. Shouldn't we? They'd like that. As the two men broke down the patrol paths and drew silent lines in the mud with twigs and fingernails, a signal pulsed in orbit. From the luminance of order, Vorthan-Kai watched his forces secure position after position. His claws drummed against the glass. No resistance, his aide observed. They've likely withdrawn inland. They believe they can bleed us from the shadows, Vorthan said. Let them. They are not shadows. We are. His eyes narrowed as he zoomed in on a drone feed. The forest canopy shimmered with heat. Still no humans. Nothing but flora, heat blooms, and empty trails. He knew there was one left. The one called Deadeye. Word had reached even the upper command rings. A man who could vanish, strike from nowhere, and make a bullet curve like a prayer. Vorthan didn't believe in myths, but he believed in symbols. And symbols had to be broken. Down on Tarki's 9, Deadeye and Mendez parted ways. Mendez would act as forward distraction, drawing patrols west with motion baits and false signals. Deadeye would go east, closer to the spire than he'd dared yet tread. By midday, he'd crawled to the rim of the second clearing. The Empire had set up a mobile perimeter, ringed with sensor pylons and heat traps. 3 elite guards patrolled the edge, their armor reflecting the jungle in unnatural tones. Deadeye observed. He watched how their patrols looped, how their boots crushed specific ferns, how the sensors chirped slightly differently when one of the guards approached. A low hum, barely audible, marked the activation window. Timing. Everything was timing. He opened the bolt on the Kestrel Mk2 and inserted a single round. A dull gray slug with a sharpened tip and etched fins. Not standard issue. This one was handmade, balanced to microns, with a tungsten carbide core. Its name was Ash. Every bullet had one. Through the scope, the spire came into view once more. This time, closer. The deck where Vorthan had stood was empty. The shield shimmered, visible now in flickers where moisture hit it like static. He counted the pulses. Every 47 seconds, a blink, barely a half second, but it was real. Inside the tower, Vorthan stared at the data stream. His intelligence officers insisted the humans were fractured, that their tech posed no threat. But he saw something they didn't. The pattern. Their deaths came in silence. No energy signatures. No heat blooms. Just vanished signals, one by one, never in the same quadrant twice. Not random. Calculated. And if this Deadeye existed, he was here. Now, find him, Vorthan ordered. He is not a soldier. He is a weapon. On the ground, Deadeye settled into position behind the root system of a fallen tree. Vines wrapped over his back. Beetles crawled across his sleeve, unbothered. The wind shifted slightly, a blessing. Scent and sound carried away from him. He took aim. 2,671 meters. He made shots like this before, but not with shielding, not with guards, not with orbital drones scanning every centimeter of terrain. His cheek rested on the stock. Breath in. Hold. The deck lights flickered. The shield blinked. But the general wasn't there. He waited. Then a movement barely perceptible. A shadow behind glass. Vorthan. Deadeye tracked him through the scope, following the angle of reflection to estimate location. The shot wouldn't be direct. It would pass through two panes of glass, a quarter second apart. The bullet would yaw. Air density, angle of refraction. He ran calculations in his head faster than most computers. Still not time. A whisper on the wind, static-laced. Ghost One, this is Bravo. You alive? Still breathing, he murmured. We lost another. Soundtrap got him. Movement in your AO is picking up. They know you're close. Let them look, Deadeye said. He adjusted elevation by one click. From the deck, Vorthan stepped into full view. Face uncovered, arms crossed, speaking to someone behind him. Deadeye's heartbeat slowed. The shield blinked, but he didn't fire. Not yet. He exhaled slowly and rolled backward, deeper into the roots. The moment wasn't perfect. Close, but not perfect. The spire's rhythm had changed. A new power draw had altered the shield cycle. It wasn't stable. He would only get one shot. He wasn't wasting it on a half-second gamble. He slung the rifle and melted back into the trees. Behind him, an Empire scout stepped into the clearing. He looked around, confused. His scanner buzzed, then flatlined. Deadeye was already gone. Vorthan stood on the deck, watching the jungle. I know you're out there, he muttered. Come then. Show me what a human god of war looks like. From the trees, Elias Rowe watched him through one last gap in the foliage. He didn't smile. He just whispered soon. Elias Rowe lay motionless beneath a tangle of vines and rot-thick bark, his breath shallow, eyes locked on the tower through his scope. 1,000 calculations passed through his mind. Wind vectors, shield flickers, atmosphere pressure, curvature deviation over distance. He wasn't thinking like a man anymore. He was an equation with a heartbeat. The jungle around him had gone strangely still. Even the insects sensed something was about to break. He adjusted the dial on his scope by a single notch. The target remained where it had been for the past 20 minutes. Vorthan-Kai, standing just inside the transparent outer shell of the command spire. Talking, laughing, commanding. A tyrant in his element, utterly unaware that death stared back at him from the trees. A faint pulse rippled across the deck, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. Deadeye had watched it for hours. The tower shield was powered by a 3-core sync pulse. Every 87 seconds, a microscopic oscillation caused a flicker in the external plating, enough to let in a bullet if the angle and timing were perfect. Perfect wasn't optional. It was required. He removed a small square of cloth from his pouch and unwrapped the bullet. This one was called Mercy. Machined from depleted uranium, hand-balanced, cryo-tempered. It had been cast not in a lab, but in a makeshift forge beneath a bombed-out bunker. There was a prayer etched into the casing. A human prayer, not to save lives, but to make one death count. He loaded the round and locked the bolt. The rifle clicked into final readiness, heavy with purpose. Elias inhaled. He felt the jungle press against his skin. Every leaf, every insect, every breath of wind. The entire planet seemed to hold still with him. From inside the spire, Vorthan paced toward the edge of the command deck. He gestured toward a tactical map, unaware he'd stepped into a line that only one man could see. He paused, placing his hand against the glass. Deadeye's heartbeat slowed. The pulse cycle began. 87 seconds. He whispered into his comms, barely audible. Ghost One, final confirmation. Mendez responded, voice tight. We're ready. Distraction set. EMP drone on trajectory. Light it up in 30 seconds. Roger. Elias shut his eyes. He could feel the weight of the world. Jane's smile, Mendez's rage, every friend lost to plasma and arrogance. The empires had laughed. Laughed at bullets. Laughed at humans. Laughed at him. 30 seconds. He centered the reticle. The scope wavered once, not from nerves, but from heat shimmer in the air. He adjusted for it, clicked left. 15 seconds. A low rumble echoed across the trees. The EMP drone dropped from orbit, drifting silent as fog toward the tower. They wouldn't see it. Not until it pulsed. 5 seconds. Vorthan leaned into the glass. Curious. Bored. The tower's lights dimmed. The EMP bloomed. And the shield dropped. Elias fired. The recoil kicked into his shoulder with a soft, familiar thud. The sound of fate. The bullet screamed across the jungle, through the clearing, through the faint mist, invisible to energy scanners. No trail, no charge, just physics and will. The first pane of glass shattered with a sharp, crystalline implosion. Inside the spire, Vorthan flinched. The second pane exploded in the same instant, fragments caught mid-air as the bullet spun through. And then it hit him, not center mass, not a lucky graze, directly between the eyes. The general's head snapped back with a wet crack. His body crumpled forward against the glass, smearing it with blood. Silence followed. For half a second, no one in the tower moved. Then chaos. Inside the spire, officers screamed. Alarm klaxons wailed. Systems failed to understand what had just happened. There was no plasma trace, no enemy ship, no attack signature. Just one hole. One perfect hole. Elias watched it all unfold through the scope. He didn't cheer, didn't gloat. He ejected the casing slowly and tucked it into his vest. Proof. Then he moved. The Empire's response was immediate. Drones fanned out across the jungle. Pulse cannons fired blind into the trees. Thermal flares rained down in spirals of fire, vaporizing everything but him. He crawled deeper into the roots, into the rot, covering himself with damp earth and old bones. They wouldn't find him. He heard Mendez's voice crackle through static. Confirm. Say again, did you get him? Deadeye answered, calm and cold. Scratch one god. There was no time to wait for the ripple effect. Already, the story would be spreading across comms, across command chains, across worlds. A galactic general, taken out by one bullet. A bullet fired from a weapon their science dismissed as obsolete. From orbit, chaos mirrored that on the ground. The luminance of order went silent for 7 seconds. 7 seconds of disbelief. Command chains broke. Orders clashed. Vorthan had never been meant to die. Not like this. Across the Empire's networks, someone leaked the footage. A high-speed camera inside the command tower had captured all. Vorthan's death in pristine clarity. The bullet's entry, the spatter, the slump of his body, and on the screen in front of him, a paused video frame. The forest. Still, unchanged, unthreatening. The footage spread like wildfire. On neutral planets, civilians rewatched it with disbelief. On rebellion-held colonies, it played on loop. On Earth, silence held as military command reviewed the kill shot. Then someone whispered he actually did it. General Aram spoke up. Make the file public. They need to see this. Someone objected. They'll retaliate. They were going to anyway. Aram said. Now they'll hesitate. Back on Tarkis, 9, Deadeye moved through a creek bed, ducking drone patrols. Burned leaves floated past him, and the sky flashed with plasma barges. None at close. He moved like he always had, between the seconds, between the lines. His face remained blank, focused, but inside, a crack had opened. Not weakness, clarity. He'd taken a shot, the one they said couldn't be made. Not with a bullet, not with human hands. He reached the rendezvous point. Mendez was there, wounded but alive. His arm was scorched, but his eyes burned with something brighter. You did it, Mendez said. No, Elias replied. We did. A tremor shook the ground. The Empire's third wave was en route. Angrier, hungrier, desperate. Mendez looked toward the horizon. They'll come for Earth now. I know. Then what? Elias pulled the casing from his vest and handed it over. Then we make sure this wasn't the last shot that mattered. As they moved deeper into the trees, the jungle closed behind them. The sky above Tarkis, 9, turned red with fury. But in every quadrant, on every comms channel, one phrase echoed louder than sirens. One bullet. And the Empire, for the first time in centuries, understood fear. The jungle burned behind them. Flames licked the sky in slow arcs as orbital plasma rained down in retribution. Tarkis, 9 was dying, 1 acre at a time, but Elias Rowe moved through the inferno like it wasn't there. Mendez limped beside him, hand clutched to his cauterized shoulder, jaw tight with pain, but still intact. The air tasted of ash and ozone. Deadeye's eyes never left the horizon. They had crossed 2 kilometers since extraction from the tower perimeter. A rendezvous was set along the jagged cliffs east of the river basin, an old smuggler's drop zone, now repurposed for black site exfiltration. It wasn't the kind of place Earth Command advertised. No ship's bore markings. No signals went out. No one in orbit would detect the evac until the job was already done. Think they'll chase us all the way out? Mendez asked between labored breaths. They already are, Elias replied. But they don't know it yet. Behind them, the sky cracked again. A massive cruiser broke through the clouds, too close to the surface, its hull glowing red-hot from friction. The ship banked left and released a spread of fusion bursts across a swath of jungle kilometers wide. Trees disintegrated, rivers boiled, but no human was left in that zone. Elias had chosen the exfil route for a reason. He didn't rely on luck. He didn't believe in miracles. He trusted calculation, discipline, and patience. It was those three traits that had turned one shot into a legend. The extraction ship was already waiting by the cliff, matte black, silent, its outline barely visible even under open sky. As they approached, the side hatch hissed open, revealing a narrow interior lit only by soft red emergency lights. Inside stood a woman in a light jumpsuit, dark skin gleaming with sweat and focus. Minerva. She wasn't military, at least not anymore. But she'd flown deep insertions for every dirty op Earth didn't admit to. Her eyes scanned Elias, then Mendez, then the jungle beyond. You bring souvenirs? She asked. Just stories, Elias replied. And one casing. Minerva stepped aside, letting them climb in before sealing the hatch. As the engines pulsed and the ship dropped below radar altitude, Mendez collapsed into a restraint chair. Elias remained standing, gripping a support rail, staring out the tiny viewport as fire consumed the treetops. You think they'll believe it? Minerva asked after a moment. The Empires, I mean. You think they'll believe one man killed Vorthan? They already believe it, Elias said. That's why they're burning the forest. Minerva didn't reply. She guided the ship along a subterranean canyon, masking their heat signature behind geothermal vents. The cruiser above circled, sensors sweeping wildly, looking for something it couldn't define. It searched for energy trails, radiation signatures, biometric anomalies. It didn't understand the absence of those things was the answer. Back in Earth orbit, the footage continued to spread. Vorthan's death had gone viral in seconds, but now the implications rippled outward like gravity waves. Propaganda ministries across several galactic factions issued denial statements. The footage was doctored, they claimed. Human psychological warfare. But no one believed it. Because something had shifted. Across mining colonies and fringe worlds, soldiers once conscripted by the empires began to ask questions. They had been told kinetic weapons were relics, that Earth was a backwater mistake given galactic pity. But one bullet had changed that. Not just the act, the possibility. On the Empire homeworld of Thalek-Zun, protests broke out in the industrial districts. Artisans painted murals of a lone soldier in green foliage, aiming a long rifle into the sky. They called him the shadow that hunts light. The empires tried to suppress it. They failed. And on Earth, beneath the mountains of old Europe, Elias stood before a room full of brass and silence. The hall was sealed. No cameras, no recorders. Only senior command and intel leads. Behind Elias, the shell casing that had ended Vorthan-Kai's reign sat in a sealed container on a titanium pedestal. On the casing was a small inscription, handwritten in a permanent marker. When empires forget fear, remind them. No one spoke for a long time. General Aram finally stepped forward. You've done more with one round than we've done with entire fleets. Half the galaxy's looking over its shoulder now. Some are asking for alliances, others for surrender terms. Elias said nothing. Aram narrowed his eyes. You don't seem proud. It wasn't pride, Elias said. It was necessary. Would you do it again? Only if they forget again. Aram gave a tight nod. We're opening a new unit. Shadow Recon. Deep insertion. Precision eliminations. No tech, no trails. Built around what you proved. Who's leading it? You are. Mendez, bandaged and leaning against the wall, smirked. Told you he wouldn't get a vacation. Elias looked down at the casing, then back at the general. I'll lead it, but we do it right. No propaganda. No half-truths. We hit where it matters. That's the idea. Across the next weeks, the galaxy shifted further. Empire fleets drew back from contested territories, hesitant to provoke further human engagements. Rebel cells, formerly fractured, began to coordinate. A new kind of warfare was born, not of mass, but of message. Each time a new general appeared to reclaim lost ground, a single kinetic round followed. Not always fatal, but always close enough to be remembered. Every shot whispered the same thing. You are not untouchable. Elias Rowe became more myth than man. But he didn't vanish in a legend. He trained the next generation himself. Snipers, saboteurs, linguists, survivalists. He taught them patience. Taught them that silence was louder than noise. That the best weapon wasn't the one in your hand, but the idea in the enemy's mind. He never named another bullet. He didn't have to. One night, standing at the edge of a ridge overlooking a shattered battlefield on a moon called Varen, he watched a skirmish end before it began. An Empire force retreated on sight. His team hadn't even revealed themselves. Mendez joined him, still alive, still grumbling about pay. They're not laughing anymore, he said. No, Elias replied. But they'll try to forget. Empires always do. Mendez looked down at the rifle in Elias's hands. You ready to remind them? Elias chambered around and lay prone. I never stopped. And in the silence between wars, in the space between empire and myth, one shot waited. Always.